Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin telling CNBC this morning that the president is, quote, perfectly happy to hit China with new tariffs if the country doesn't want to move forward in negotiations. We bring in former trade representative for both the Obama and Trump administrations, recently served as the deputy assistant to the president for international economic affairs and deputy director of the National Economic Council, the pride of Kenosha, Wisconsin. Clete Williams, good to see you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. The Chinese are watching what happened with Mexico. They get the New York Times. Mexico relented on border long before Trump's deal. Conditions in PAC avert tariffs were set months ago. They read Bloomberg, who this morning reports that there really is no deal in place for Mexico to buy a lot more for our farmers. Essentially, they see this as a paper deal. That's the reporting. Whether or not that's true or not, different story. Could embolden them, couldn't it?
Well, I really hope the Chinese don't get the wrong signals from this. First of all, I might take issue with the fact that it's simply a paper deal. But more importantly, I think the president has shown time and again that if China isn't willing to commit to real structural reforms, that's not a deal that's good enough for him. And I also think there's some differences here, both politically and economically, that I think are worth exploring. The politics of this.
If the Chinese are sitting here and looking at the president, and reasonable people can disagree exactly on the deal, but the reporting, at least in the tenor, seems to give an opportunity to think that he caved here, or certainly wasn't willing to really go the distance and put the thumb screws to the Mexican government on this. Why should the Chinese believe they're going to get the thumb screws and come to the table with something meaningful?
Well, again, I think the president has shown that he's willing to escalate things with China.
Give me examples.
With China, he's been willing to escalate it already. But what I was going to get into is there's a difference politically here. With China, the president has really strong support from Congress, from the business community, for the strategy to take them on and to get real change. But with Mexico, you heard a different reaction this week from businesses who were concerned about what was going to happen, and from senators who were speaking out against it. And I think it also comes down to the economics. If you look at China, a lot of what we're getting from them are end products, consumer products, and things like that. With respect to Mexico, it's part of a very integrated North American supply chain.
Good point.
Things are going back and forth 6 and 7 times sometimes in the auto industry, and so that 5% tariff can really compound upon itself. And that's why I think you're going to see a totally different approach to Mexico and to China, and I just hope China doesn't read the wrong signals here.
All right, speaking of something that not only are they reading, but probably watching as well, as the administration officials out spinning this deal with Mexico this morning. Here is the acting Homeland Security Secretary with Bret Baier in for Chris Wallace this morning. Take a listen.
How much of this is new?
All of it is new. This is more than a tenfold commitment to increase their security in Chiapas. That's where people are entering from Guatemala in southern Mexico.
Your predecessor, Secretary Nielsen, testified that these things were happening to the House Judiciary Committee. There were talks about moving National Guard troops to the southern border with Guatemala. You're saying this is different than that?
It's very different. The president put a charge in this whole dialogue with Mexico with the tariff threat, brought them to the table.
All right, the Mexicans in the past have said they're going to do better on the border, but the Chinese in the past have said they're going to do better on lots of things. And I remember back when the Chinese said they were going to stop hacking into U.S. companies, and I was talking to somebody that as the Xi Jinping was signing the agreement, they were realizing that Chinese hackers were back at it. Again, it goes to the issue of accountability. Right. How do the Chinese believe that even if they make these deals, there is going to be accountability to back them up?
Well, I think the difference you see between the approaches in the Trump administration and the Obama administration is here that these deals that the Trump administration is working on with China are backed up with strong enforcement provisions. That is a critical objective of the Trump administration, something the Obama administration didn't achieve.
Real quick, you worked in both administrations.
Right.
Give me specifics that how you know the Chinese know that things are different and there's a different sheriff in town, or have they not gotten the message yet?
Well, I think $300 billion in tariffs, or I guess $250 billion in tariffs already should send that signal. And I think what I witnessed as part of the negotiating team for the Trump administration was that China was putting things on the table in a way that they had never done before.
But then didn't they take them all off the table?
They didn't take them all off the table. I mean, there were some very specific things that China was pushing back on. But I would stress, and I think you've heard this from Secretary Mnuchin and Ambassador Lighthizer, that the core of the deal was there, and it was very good. And I think that ultimately, hopefully after the G20, when the leaders get back together, the political situation can be improved, and then we can get back to that. And again, the Obama administration was never anywhere near as far with China on a range of issues, force tech, IP, agriculture, that the Trump administration was.
Clete, we appreciate your insights and your analysis. Welcome to the private sector out of government. We thank you for your service for those years there. And for some reason, I think there's going to be a lot to talk about on this in the coming weeks and months. We'll have you back, sir.
I look forward to that. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.